Hey guys, hi, how you doing? Hope you're well. So, as promised, the South African story. Now, the story I'm going to tell you tonight is actually a Zulu story that I told at a wedding in South Africa in December. And to really capture the soul of the story, I've used some Zulu phrases. Now, to all my Zulu friends that are listening to the story, I hope I've got the pronunciation right. If I haven't, I apologize, and please do let me know. Thank you. So, on that note, sit back, relax. I'm going to tell you a story. A Zulu grandmother walked out of her hut, and there on the ground were all the boys and girls from the village. She came out and she sat down on a tree stump and she put her little bag down next to her. And she looked across at all the boys and girls. They were all sitting there with their eyes wide and big smiles on their faces, full of excitement. One little boy put up his hand. Gogo, Zulu for grandmother. Gogo, please tell us a story. You see, Gogo was the grandmother of stories, and all the children would come to listen to her. She smiled as she looked across and she nodded. Okay. Kwesukusukela. Once upon a time. To which all the boys and girls instantly replied, Kozi Kozi Semfika and Gogotswana. And now we shall put her in a small pot. You see, Gogo had initiated the formula for storytelling by saying Kwesukusukela, once upon a time. She was now in a small pot. She was in a tight corner. She had no choice but to carry on. She smiled again and she said, okay. A long time ago, nestled in the valley of 1,000 hills, not far from where you're sitting today, lived a young girl by the name of Khethiwe. Now, not only was Khethiwe strikingly beautiful, but she was also incredibly hard-working. You see, her father was the chief herdsman for the king, and her mother was a very well-respected seamstress. She could make the most amazing clothes from the simplest of cloth. And at the end of a hard day's work, Khethiwe would be seen running down towards the river. And she would go down to that part of the river which created a large pool, and she would go down there to bathe. Her particular favorite time of the day was at sunset. You know, that time of the day when the sun is glowing across the land. And that golden color is reflecting off the trees, off the grass, and off the people. And it's no surprise that the people would say at that time of the day, Labantu Bale, time of the beautiful people. Now, looking at Khethiwe, you would think she had everything. But there was one thing missing in Khethiwe's life. You see, Khethiwe was haunted by the voices of the elders and the king. No woman will play the Mbira. The Mbira, you ask. The Mbira. Some may know it as the kalimba, many as the thumb piano. You see, the elders believed that the Mbira was a magical instrument that could talk to the ancestors, and this was strictly forbidden for women to do. And how Khethiwe longed to play the Mbira. For her, it was an instrument that connected with nature. And what was wrong with talking to the ancestors? Why can a woman not do that? So this really frustrated Khethiwe. Now, one particular afternoon, when Khethiwe was swimming in the river, in the pool, at that time of the day when people would say Labantu Bale, she saw something strange. At first, She thought it was the branch of a tree floating on the river towards her, but the closer she looked, she noticed this was not a branch. This was an arm, and in the hand it was carrying something, and it came closer and closer and closer to Khethiwe. And she stood there, absolutely still, as this arm holding out this item came up to her. She knew not what to do, and all she could think of doing was to just reach out and take the item. And she did that, and she reached out, and all she said was, "Ngiyabonga," thank you. And as she said that, the arm disappeared under the water. She quickly took this wrapped gift, something hard inside a cloth. What was strange was that it was extremely dry, considering that this arm was coming along the river. And she went and she sat on the bank. She quickly put her clothes on and she sat down and she started to unwrap the item. And inside was a kalimba, and she dropped it on her lap and she looked around. She didn't want anybody to see that she had this forbidden instrument on her lap. She had an Mbira, a kalimba, sitting on her lap. She thought, there's no way I can sit here and play this. So she got up and she quickly ran up the river, and she found a small cave that nobody else would have been able to see her, and she sat inside there and she started to tap away on the Mbira. "Hey," she said. Frustrated, she thought it would be easier than this. She couldn't quite get the tune that she was looking for, and she seemed a little bit disappointed, and she said to herself, perhaps the Mbira is not meant for women. Perhaps the elders are right. She wrapped the Mbira back in the cloth, and she quickly ran back home and she stuck it under her bed for safekeeping. And every day she would bring her Mbira down to the little cave, and she would sit there and she would practice. And one day, when she was looking out across the river, she stopped and paused, because she looked into the trees, and the wind blowing the branches and the leaves, it sounded like the ancestors were talking to her. And she was sure to have heard Ubeka Udlala, which is Zulu for keep playing. And she went back to Mbira and she carried on. Hey, she smiled. She had figured out how to play the Mbira, and she was overjoyed. But still at the same time she was very sad, because, again, the voices in her head, no woman shall play the Mbira, came into her head. Now, harvest time had approached, and there was always a big celebration, which was held in the king's kraal. The kraal is like the king's palace. And that evening the king was seated at his throne, and to start the festivities he held up his hand, and as he put his hand in the air, so the drummers started playing. the drummers started, the Mbira players came out. And the Mbira players, all the men, all the Mbira players came out and started to play with the drummers. And they created the most sensational rhythm. And all the women came out and started to dance. And Khethiwe, you see, her mother had been making her a very fine dress. And Khethiwe came out and she started to dance. And boy, could she dance. And with the reflection of the fire against her skin, she looked absolutely magnificent. And the men were all looking at her. Oh, Yadela Mfazi. Oh, Azala Leia Ntombi. Hiya, ya. I would love her to be my wife or my girlfriend. And the king looked at Khethiwe as well. And he smiled and he nodded. And Lovukazi Mbira, Khethiwe. And Khethiwe, she was very fond of the king. The king was very old, you see, and she saw the king as her grandfather. You see, she had no grandfather. Her grandfather had gone to live with the ancestors a long time ago. And how she longed for the king to be her grandfather. All she wanted to do was go up to the king and say, "Can you be my grandfather?" But you can't do that. You can't just go up to somebody and say, "Hey, do you want to be my grandfather?" So she knew she couldn't do that. And the harvest festival was an absolute sensational success. Now, soon thereafter, word spread that the king was not well. And the king got sicker and sicker and had not been seen for weeks and remained in his kraal, in his hut. And many of the elders and the Mbira players were seen coming and going. The Isangoma, the witch doctor, he came too, to try and see if he could do something to make the king well. And people feared. They feared that they would never see the king again. And again, one day, Khethiwe was sitting down by the river, sitting in her cave, playing on her little Mbira. When she stopped and again saw the arm approaching her. And the arm came up to her, this time not carrying anything, but slowly. And the palm facing her, and the fingers closed, and the hand pointed. And it pointed over Khethiwe back in the direction of the tribe, in the direction of the king's kraal. Khethiwe knew exactly what she had to do. She picked up the Mbira and she started to run, and she started to run, and she started to play. She played and she ran, and she ran and she played. And when people saw her, they saw this young woman playing in Mbira, they shouted, "Mama Shani, Mama Shani, what is this?" But Khethiwe was possessed. She would not stop for anybody. And if she had stopped, she might have seen her father and her mother holding each other closely, and her father with his eyes bright, smiling, nodding his head. And Khethiwe arrived at the king's kraal and went inside the king's hut on her knees and crawled in. The first thing that she noticed was the stench, the smoke that filled her eyes. Who knows what was being burned? What was the Isangoma? What was the witch doctor burning? It reeked. It was horrible. And as she started to adjust to the dark light of the hut, she saw the Isangoma wiping blood across the king's face. And in the back were a few drummers playing a soft rhythmic beat. And the Mbira players were playing as well. And people were singing and chanting, and Isangoma was saying things Khethiwe had no idea what. But she went straight up to the king. At first she thought the king had died, but she could still see that he was breathing. His chest slowly rising and slowly falling. His eyes were closed, but Khethiwe went up to his left side and whispered and started to sing in a whispering voice. Siyai bizai mamoya yabanga seku. Siyai bizai mamoya yabanga seku. O spirits, do not come now. Your time is not now. Siyai biza imamoya yabanga seku. And after a while the king's eyes opened, and he sat up straight and looked around the hut. Everyone was alarmed, but he was looking around and he was not looking at anybody in particular. It seemed as though he was looking and talking to people that had long since departed. He was talking to the ancestors of the past. And they were saying to him, Mbeka, ufila, Mbeka, ufila. Keep on living. And the king started to repeat this. Mbeka, ufila. And he blinked his eyes and he started to look around at the people now in the room. And his eyes set upon Khethiwe's. Khethiwe, you saved my life. Mbeka, udlala. Keep on playing. Khethiwe, ndlovukazi Mbira. Ndlovukazi Mbira. Queen of the Mbira. And with that everybody started to chant, Ndlovukazi Mbira. And the king shouted, from this day on, any man, woman or child who wishes to play the Mbira can do so. And this is now law. And everybody started to walk out of the hut chanting, Ndlovukazi Mbira, Ndlovukazi Mbira. And when everybody else from the tribe was standing outside and they saw Khethiwe walking out with the king and all the Mbira players coming forth, they knew that something amazing had happened. And one of the elders walked up to Khethiwe and handed her an Mbira. Ngiyabonga, she said with a big smile, thank you. And everyone went up to Khethiwe's mom and dad and patted them on the back and gave them big hugs. Her parents were very proud indeed. And that day they had another celebration, the sweetest celebration they had ever known. In Khethiwe, that was the most amazing day she ever had. Kozi kozi iafila. And here I rest my story. And when Gogo sat on the tree stump finishing the story, the children sat there in absolute silence. And she said to them, Lelelani zingani. Listen, children, if you find yourself sitting on the banks of a river, just stop and be quiet. Look at the trees and listen to the leaves whispering to each other. Listen to the sounds of the grass. Listen to the sounds of the water rippling across the stones. Listen to the animals, listen to the birds, listen to all the insects of the world. And perhaps, if you listen just hard enough, you might hear, and with that, Gogo reached down into the bag next to her and she pulled out something. She pulled out something covered in the most amazing blue cloth, and she took it out and she said, just maybe you might hear the sounds of Khethiwe's Mbira. Thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to, please do send me any feedback, any requests for stories. I hope you enjoyed that. I know it was a long story, but for me it's actually one of my favorites. So thanks again. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Tell some stories. Chat soon. Bye.